The Coalition frigate shook hard. Metal groaned and twisted as another blast hit the outer hull. Sparks flew from the ceiling panels, and the lights flickered between bright white and complete darkness. Smoke filled the corridors, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. Jinho ran through the chaos with his medical bag bouncing against his hip. He was a combat medic, trained for moments exactly like this. His boots pounded against the metal floor as alarms screamed all around him. Red emergency lights painted everything in an angry glow. "Medic to forward deck. We have casualties." The voice crackled through his earpiece, barely audible over the noise of battle. Jinho turned a corner and nearly crashed into a Velthon crew member. The alien was tall and thin, with a body that looked like it was made of blue crystal. The Velthon pressed itself against the wall, its eyes wide with fear. "Move!" Jinho shouted, pushing past. He had no time for fear right now. The forward deck was worse than he expected. The Ravik attackers had breached the outer defense grid, and their weapons had torn through the ship's armor like paper. 3 crew members lay on the ground. One was already being treated by another medic. One was beyond help. But the third one made Jinho's blood run cold. Hyun, a human marine from Seoul, was on his back. His armor was cracked open on the left side. Blood pooled beneath him. And his left leg, was bent at an angle that made Jinho's stomach turn. White bone stuck out through the torn fabric of his uniform and the broken skin. 2 Velthon medics stood over Hyun. They weren't moving. They just stared down at him with their crystalline faces showing something that looked like sadness. One of them turned to Jinho. "He is lost," the Velthon said in a soft, musical voice. "We will prepare the death rites." "Get out of my way," Jinho said, dropping to his knees beside Hyun. The Velthons didn't move. A Kresh warrior, one of the insect-like aliens with 4 arms and a hard shell covering its body, clicked its mandibles together. "His bone structure is compromised. He cannot continue. We must evacuate him to the medical station. The journey takes 6 hours. He will likely expire during transport." I said move. Jinho pushed past them and opened his medical bag. Hyun's eyes were half closed, but he was conscious. Barely. His face was pale, covered in sweat. "Jinho," he whispered, "my leg. I can't feel my leg." "That's the shock talking," Jinho said, his hands already moving. He had done this 100 times in training and twice in real combat before today. "You're going to be fine." He pulled out a pressure injector and pressed it against Hyun's neck. The device hissed as it pushed medicine into his bloodstream. First, something to stop the bleeding. Second, something to numb the pain. Third, something to keep him conscious and alert. The Velthon medics watched in silence. More aliens gathered around, drawn by curiosity or horror. Jinho ignored them all. "Hyun, listen to me," Jinho said, looking into his friend's eyes. "This is going to hurt, but I need you to trust me." "Do it," Hyun managed to say through gritted teeth. Jinho took a deep breath. He had to work fast. The femur, the thigh bone, had snapped clean through. It was a compound fracture, which meant the bone had broken through the skin. In a perfect world, in a proper hospital, this would require surgery, pins and plates, weeks of recovery. But this wasn't a perfect world. This was a battleship under attack, and Hyun was a Marine who was needed at his post. Jinho grabbed the leg with both hands, one above the break and one below. The aliens around him made sounds of shock and disgust. "What is he doing?" One whispered. "He's touching the broken bone." Another said, their voice filled with horror. Jinho tuned them out. He felt along the bone, finding where the pieces ended. Then, in one smooth motion, he pulled the leg straight. The bone slid back into place with a sound that made everyone except Jinho flinch. Hyun screamed. It was a short scream, cut off as the pain medicine kicked in stronger. Jinho didn't stop. He grabbed an emergency stabilization brace from his bag, a new piece of tech that the humans had brought to the Coalition. It looked like a sleeve made of smart fabric. He wrapped it around Hyun's leg from hip to ankle. The fabric tightened automatically, sensing the break. Then it went hard, stiff as steel, holding the bone perfectly in place. "Bone alignment complete," Jinho said, more to himself than anyone else. "Circulation is good. No nerve damage that I can detect." He injected Hyun with one more shot, antibiotics to prevent infection. Then he sat back on his heels and let out a long breath. Hyun opened his eyes fully. The color was returning to his face. "Did you just—" he started to say. "Yeah," Jinho said. I put your bone back together. Can you feel your toes? Hyun wiggled them inside his boot. Yeah, I can. Good. That means no permanent damage. Jinho stood up and offered his hand. The aliens gasped as Hyun took the hand and pulled himself to his feet. He wobbled for a moment, leaning heavily on his right leg. But he was standing. More than that, he was alive and conscious. It still hurts, Hyun said. It's going to hurt for a while, Jinho admitted. But you can walk. You can fight if you have to. Hyun bent down and picked up his rifle from where it had fallen. He checked the charge and nodded. I can fight. A Velthan medic stepped forward, her crystalline body shaking. This is not possible. His skeletal structure was compromised. He should be in critical condition for months. Human bones heal, Jinho said simply. He started packing up his medical bag. We stabilize the break, keep it immobilized, and the body does the rest. A Kresh warrior pushed through the crowd. Her name was Vix, and she was one of the senior officers on the ship. She looked at Hyun, then at Jinho, then back at Hyun. Her mandibles clicked rapidly, which Jinho had learned meant she was thinking hard. The human put the bone back, she said slowly, as if testing out the words. And the human marine is walking. That's right, Jinho said. How long until he is fully recovered? Jinho shrugged. 6 to 8 weeks for the bone to fully heal. But he can do light duty now. Combat duty in a few days if necessary. The aliens fell silent. In their cultures, in their species, a broken bone meant months in a medical bay. It meant being helpless, dependent on others. For some species, it meant death. But here was a human standing on a leg that had been broken just minutes ago. The ship shook again. Another blast from the Ravik attackers. The battle wasn't over. Everyone back to your posts, Vic shouted. The Kresh warrior turned to Hyun. Can you man the weapons station? Hyun tested his weight on the injured leg. He winced but nodded. I can do it. Then go. We need every fighter. Hyun limped toward the weapons bay, rifle in hand. The other Marines made room for him, helping him into position. Within seconds, he was back at the controls, firing at the enemy ships. Jinho watched him go, then turned to find more wounded. He could feel the eyes of the alien crew on him. They were looking at him differently now, not with the polite respect they had shown before, but with something else, something that looked almost like fear. The Velthan medic approached him cautiously. You said this is normal? For humans? It's standard field procedure, Jinho said. We've been doing battlefield medicine like this for thousands of years. Since before we had proper hospitals, your species fights through broken bones. Jinho thought about that. About all the times he had seen soldiers return to battle with injuries that would have killed or crippled most other species. About the countless humans throughout history who had kept going despite pain, despite injury, despite everything. Yeah, he said finally. We do. The Velthan made a sound like wind through crystal. Remarkable. And terrifying. Jinho smiled grimly and headed toward the next casualty. The battle was still raging, and there would be more wounded before this day was done. The battle ended 2 hours later. The Ravik attackers retreated after losing 3 of their ships. The coalition frigate was damaged but still flying. The crew worked to patch holes in the hull and restart the damaged systems. Jinho sat in the medical bay, finishing his reports. His hands were steady as he typed, but his mind was tired. He had treated 14 casualties during the battle. Most were minor, cuts, burns, bruises. 3 were serious. Hyun's broken leg was the worst, but all of them were alive. The door to the medical bay slid open. Jinho looked up, expecting another patient. Instead, he saw what looked like half the ship's medical staff crowding through the entrance. Leading them was Thel, the chief medical officer. She was Velthan, her crystalline body reflecting the bright lights of the medbay. Behind her came Vix, the Kresh surgeon who had been at the battle scene. Then came more aliens. A Dralin with purple scales, a moth-like Uvari with fuzzy wings, and at least 10 others from species Jinho didn't recognize. Can I help you? Jinho asked, setting down his tablet. Thel walked forward. Her movements were slow and careful, like she was approaching something dangerous. We need to talk about what you did today. Which part? Jinho had done a lot during the battle. The Marine, Hyun, the bone. Thel gestured with one of her crystalline limbs. You put his bone back together. We watched the security footage. We need you to explain how this is possible. Jinho sighed. He should have expected this. It's called emergency fracture reduction. It's a basic field medicine technique. Basic? Vic stepped forward, her mandibles clicking rapidly. There is nothing basic about manually realigning a compound fracture and having the patient return to combat duty minutes later. Look, Jinho said, standing up. I understand this seems unusual to you, but for humans this is normal. We've been doing it for centuries. Thel made a sound like tinkling glass. It was how Velthans expressed disbelief. Show us, explain, we need to understand. Jinho walked over to the medical display screen on the wall. He pulled up the human medical database that all human medics carried with them. Okay, Human Medicine 101. The aliens crowded around the screen. Some of them had to kneel or hover to get a good view. First, you need to understand human bones, Jinho began. He brought up an image of a human skeleton. Our bones are made of living tissue. They have blood vessels running through them. They have cells that are constantly breaking down old bone and building new bone. He zoomed in on a single bone, showing its internal structure. When a bone breaks, the body immediately starts to heal it. Blood flows to the area. New bone cells begin to form. Within days, a soft callus forms around the break. Within weeks, that callus hardens into new bone. A Drallan physician raised one of its clawed hands. But the healing process is slow. How does this allow for immediate return to duty? We don't wait for the healing to finish, Jinho said. We stabilize the break, keep the bones in the right position, and let the body do its work. The patient can move around while the healing happens as long as the bone is properly supported. He brought up more images, pictures from Earth's history. Ancient humans wrapping broken limbs in stiff bandages. Medieval doctors using wooden splints. Modern surgeons installing metal plates and pins. We've been doing this for thousands of years. We had to. In Earth's past, if you broke a bone, you couldn't just lie down for months. You had to keep working, keep hunting, keep surviving. Vix leaned closer to the screen. Your ancestors fought and worked with broken bones? Yes. Not comfortably, but yes. Thel touched the screen and it changed to show the footage from today's battle. Jinho watched himself work on Hyun's leg. Watched himself pull the bone back into place. Watched Hyun stand up and walk away. This should not be possible, Thel said quietly. In Velthan physiology, a break in our crystalline structure requires complete regeneration. We must be immobile for 3 to 4 months while new crystal grows. Any movement during that time causes permanent damage. Kresh are similar, Vix added. Our exoskeletons must shed and regrow completely. If a supporting bone beneath the shell breaks, we cannot move until it heals. This takes 2 months at minimum. Jinho looked around at the gathered aliens. He saw the same expression on all their faces. Confusion mixed with something like awe. I'm starting to understand why this seems so strange to you. Your biology is different from ours. Very different, said the Drallan. My species heals quickly, but we cannot function with structural damage. A broken bone means complete incapacitation. For humans, it means inconvenience, Jinho said. Pain, yes. Limited mobility, yes. But not helplessness. He pulled up more data. Combat reports from human military history. In Earth's wars, human soldiers have continued fighting with broken bones, cracked ribs, fractured skulls. We have records of soldiers walking dozens of miles on broken legs to reach safety. Athletes who finished competitions with broken bones. Laborers who completed their work shifts with fractures. The medical bay was silent except for the hum of the equipment. Finally, a small Yuvari physician spoke up. Her voice was soft, like a whisper. Are all humans like this? Is this ability universal to your species? Pretty much, Jinho said. Some humans heal faster than others. Some have stronger bones. But all of us can heal from breaks, and most of us can function while healing. Thel brought up another screen. This one showed medical statistics from the past year of coalition operations. We compared human injury reports to those of other species. We didn't understand what we were seeing until today. She pointed to the numbers. Humans have the same rate of skeletal injuries as other species. But your return to duty time is... She paused like she couldn't believe what she was saying. 75% faster. Sounds about right, Jinho said. This changes everything, Vix said. Her mandibles were spread wide, which Jinho had learned meant shock or extreme interest. We have been calculating human combat effectiveness incorrectly. We assumed that a skeletal injury removed a human from duty for the same length of time as it would remove one of us. But it doesn't, Thel said. She turned to Jinho, her crystalline eyes reflecting his image back at him. You can put broken humans back into battle. If the injury isn't too severe, yes. Show us more, the Drallan said. Show us everything. We need to learn these techniques. Jinho spent the next hour walking them through human emergency medicine. He showed them how to reduce a fracture, the careful pulling and aligning of bones. He showed them the various types of splints and braces humans used. He explained pain management, infection prevention, and the signs of complications. The aliens watched everything with intense focus. They asked questions constantly. Some of their questions were medical, others were almost philosophical. Do humans feel less pain than other species? No, Jinho explained. They just had cultural and biological tools to push through pain. Are human bones stronger? Not necessarily. They just healed better. Is this ability genetic? Partly. All humans had it, but it had been refined by millions of years of evolution. Nurse Minji entered the med bay halfway through the lecture. She was another human medic, assigned to the overnight shift. She stopped when she saw the crowd of aliens. What's going on? She asked. They want to know about fracture reduction, Jinho said. Minji laughed. Oh, you guys never seen a broken bone get fixed before? The aliens all shook their heads or made negative gestures in their various ways. Huh? Minji set down her bag. Well, it's pretty straightforward. You align the bones, keep them stable, manage the pain, and wait. The body does most of the work. But the patient can still function? Asked a Yuvari. Sure, I broke my arm in 3 places during training. Finished the training course before I got it properly set. Minji rolled up her sleeve, showing a long scar on her forearm. See? Good as new now. The aliens stared at the scar like it was a holy relic. Thel turned back to Jinho. We need to report this to Coalition Medical Command. They need to know about human capabilities. It's not a secret, Jinho said. It's in all our medical files. Yes, but we never understood what it meant. We thought your medical reports were exaggerating or mistranslated. Thel touched her screen, making notes. We need to revise all combat medical protocols. We need to train more medics in human techniques. We need to... The door opened again. This time it was Captain Deho, the human commander of the frigate's marine contingent. He was a stern man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He looked at the crowd of aliens in the med bay and raised an eyebrow. Problem? He asked. No problem, sir, Jinho said. Just answering some questions about battlefield medicine. Deho walked over and looked at the screens. He saw the images of human skeletal injuries, the medical procedures, the return-to-duty statistics. He nodded slowly. They're impressed by fracture reduction? Very impressed, sir. Deho smiled slightly. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a man who had just realized something important. Good. Maybe now they'll understand why we keep saying we don't need as much medical evacuation capacity as they think we do. Thel turned to the captain. Your species has been tolerating what we would consider crippling injuries and saying nothing. We didn't think it was worth mentioning, Deho said. We just assumed everyone healed like we do. No one heals like you do, Vic said. No one in the Coalition. Perhaps no one in the known galaxy. There was a long moment of silence. Then Deho spoke again. His voice keyed, the words spread through the Coalition fleet faster than light-speed communications. Within 2 days, every ship knew about the human medic who had put the bone back and sent a Marine back into combat. Within a week, formal requests arrived from 14 different species, all asking to observe human medical techniques. Captain Deho stood in the communications room, reading through the requests with a bemused expression. They want to watch us work? More than that, said Admiral Sunhee, the human fleet commander. Her image flickered on the screen from her flagship, 3 systems away. They want a formal demonstration. Coalition Medical Command is asking us to send our best people to the flagship for a full presentation. Deho nodded. Jinho and Yuna? Those are the names that keep coming up in the requests. The combat medic who treated the fracture and our best surgeon. Sunhee leaned back in her chair. This is bigger than just medicine, Deho. They're starting to realize that humans are different in fundamental ways. Is that good or bad? Depends on what we do next. Send them. Show them what we can do. But keep it professional. We're not showing off. We're teaching. 2 days later, Jinho found himself on a shuttle to the Coalition flagship with Surgeon Yuna. She was a woman in her 40s, calm and precise in everything she did. She had been a civilian trauma surgeon before joining the military, and she had seen everything. Nervous? She asked as the shuttle docked. A little, Jinho admitted. I've never taught aliens before. Just remember they're all doctors and medics. They understand the fundamentals. We're just showing them our approach. Yuna gathered her equipment bags, and don't be surprised if they're shocked. From what I've read, most species' medicine is a lot more cautious than ours. The amphitheater was enormous. Jinho had expected maybe 50 observers. Instead, he walked into a room filled with hundreds of aliens. They sat in curved rows rising up from the central demonstration floor. Every species in the coalition seemed to be represented. Velthans, Kresh, Dralans, Uvari, and dozens more. A Velthan admiral stood at the podium, her crystalline body amplifying her voice naturally. We gather today to learn from our human colleagues. In recent combat operations, we have observed medical techniques that challenge our understanding of battlefield medicine. Surgeon Yuna and combat medic Jinho will demonstrate these techniques. The admiral stepped aside. Yuna walked to the podium with confidence. Jinho followed, carrying their equipment cases. Thank you all for coming, Yuna began. We're going to start with basics. Human anatomy, and why our medicine developed the way it did. She activated the holographic projector. A full-size human skeleton appeared in the center of the floor, rotating slowly so everyone could see it. Humans are vertebrates with an internal skeleton made of bone tissue. We have 206 bones in our adult bodies. These bones serve 3 functions: structure, protection, and movement. She pointed to different parts of the skeleton as she spoke. Our bones are living tissue. They have blood vessels, nerves, and cells. They are constantly remodeling themselves throughout our lives. A Kresh observer raised one of its 4 arms. This living bone, it can repair itself? Yes. When a bone breaks, the body immediately begins the repair process. Blood flows to the injury site. Specialized cells called osteoblasts create new bone tissue. Within 6 to 8 weeks, most fractures heal completely. Murmurs ran through the audience. Jinho could see surprise on many faces. Yuna continued. This ability to self-repair shaped human medicine. We didn't need to replace broken bones. We just needed to keep them in the right position while they healed. She pulled up historical images, ancient Egyptian mummies with splinted bones, Greek physicians' writings about fracture treatment, medieval techniques, modern surgery. We've been treating broken bones for at least 5,000 years of recorded history. Probably longer. The hologram changed to show a time-lapse video of a bone healing. The audience watched in silence as the break sealed itself, new bone growing across the gap. But self-repair is only useful if the broken pieces are properly aligned, Yuna said. This is where field medicine becomes important. In combat, in disasters, in remote locations, we can't always get patients to a hospital quickly, so we learn to treat them where they are. Jinho stepped forward. His part was next. I'm going to demonstrate emergency fracture reduction. This is the technique I used during the recent battle. He opened his equipment case. Inside were medical models, synthetic bones covered in synthetic flesh designed for training. He pulled out a model of a human leg with a simulated fracture. This represents a compound fracture of the femur, the thigh bone. The bone has broken and pierced the skin. In many species medicine, this would be a catastrophic injury requiring immediate evacuation and extensive surgery. He heard several beings making sounds of agreement. In human field medicine, this is serious but treatable. Jinho laid the model on the demonstration table. The first step is pain management and stabilization of the patient. He showed them the pressure injectors he used. These deliver medication through the skin without needles. First, a coagulant to control bleeding. Second, a local anesthetic to numb the area. Third, a combination of pain reliever and a drug to keep the patient conscious and alert. A Dryland physician stood up. You keep the patient conscious. Why not sedate them? Because we might need them to stay functional. In combat, we can't always spare someone to carry an unconscious person to safety. If the patient can walk even with help, that's better than sedation. He demonstrated each injection on the model, explaining the dosages and effects. Next, we assess the damage. Jinho ran his hands over the model's leg, showing how to feel for the break. We need to know if it's a clean break or a shattered bone. If there's nerve damage or blood vessel damage, this tells us if we can treat in the field or if we need immediate evacuation. And if it's a clean break, asked a Uvari, then we perform the reduction. Jinho positioned his hands on the model. The goal is to realign the bone ends so they're in proper position for healing. This requires pulling the leg to overcome muscle tension, then guiding the bones back into place. He demonstrated slowly, explaining each movement. The bone pieces in the model clicked together with a sound that made several aliens flinch. Once aligned, we stabilize. He pulled out an emergency brace from his kit. This is human technology, designed specifically for field use. It's a smart fabric that detects the break, conforms to the limb, and then hardens to keep everything immobile. He wrapped the brace around the model's leg. Within seconds, it went rigid. The patient can now walk with support. They're not ready for combat, but they can move under their own power. The bone will heal over the next 6 to 8 weeks. Yuna stepped forward again. That's field treatment. In a proper medical facility, we can do more. She activated a new hologram showing a surgical suite. For complex fractures, we use internal fixation. Metal plates and screws hold the bones in perfect alignment. This allows even faster return to function. The hologram showed a surgery in progress. Yuna narrated as the image showed surgeons opening a leg, placing a metal plate along the bone, securing it with screws. The patient can usually bear weight on the limb within days. Full healing takes weeks, but they're mobile and functional much sooner. A Velthan medical officer stood, her body shimmering with reflected light. This seems very invasive. You cut into the body. You insert foreign objects. Are there not risks? Of course there are risks, Yuna said. Infection, improper healing, rejection of the implants. But we've been refining these techniques for over a century. The success rate is very high and the benefits outweigh the risks. Another alien spoke up, a species Jinho didn't recognize with green skin and multiple eyes. You say humans can function with these injuries. But what about the pain? The psychological trauma? Jinho answered this one. Humans feel pain just like any other species. But we have cultural and biological mechanisms to push through it. We're endurance hunters by evolution. Our ancestors had to keep moving even when injured or they wouldn't survive. He pulled up more data. We also have extensive pain management protocols. Medications, psychological techniques, physical therapy. We help patients cope with pain while they heal. Show us more, someone called from the upper rows. Show us other techniques. For the next 3 hours, Jinho and Yuna demonstrated human medicine. They showed burn treatment, aggressive wound care that prioritized infection control and function over perfect healing. They showed blood loss protocols, transfusions, synthetic blood products, rapid fluid replacement. They showed toxin treatment, organ support, combat trauma care. With each demonstration, the aliens grew more amazed and more disturbed. Human medicine was aggressive in ways they had never considered. Where other species prioritized perfect healing and patient comfort, humans prioritized survival and rapid return to function. During a break, Thel approached them. The Velthan medical officer looked overwhelmed. This is extraordinary. And terrifying. Why terrifying? Yuna asked. Because it reveals how different humans are. Your tolerance for damage, your ability to function while injured, your willingness to accept imperfect healing if it means staying active. Thel gestured with her crystalline limbs, struggling for. The demonstration changed everything. Within days, the Coalition Medical Command downloaded every piece of human medical data they could access. Research teams from 30 different worlds sent requests to study human healing. Medical journals across the galaxy published emergency articles about the human resilience factor. But the real shock came when someone in Coalition intelligence started comparing the medical data to combat. Reports. 2 weeks after the demonstration, Jinho received an urgent summons. He was to report to the Coalition War Council immediately. No explanation given. The council met in a secure station orbiting a neutral world. Jinho arrived to find himself in a massive chamber filled with the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. Generals, admirals, intelligence chiefs, and civilian leaders from dozens of species. He stood in the center of the room, feeling very small. Admiral Sunhee sat at the human delegation's position. Next to her was Captain Daeho and Dr. Donghyun, the chief medical advisor for all human forces. They looked calm, but Jinho could see tension in their postures. A Kresh general stood up. His shell was decorated with medals and rank insignia. His mandibles clicked as he spoke. Combat medic Jinho, you treated a Marine named Hyun during the battle with Ravik forces. Compound fracture of the femur. Is this correct? Yes, sir. And the Marine returned to combat duty within minutes? Yes, sir. According to our records, Hyun is currently on active duty. He has participated in 3 more combat operations since that injury. Is this also correct? Jinho glanced at Admiral Sunhee. She nodded slightly. Yes, sir. As far as I know, the Kresh General turned to address the entire council. This is not an isolated incident. Since we began examining human medical records, we have found hundreds of similar cases, humans returning to duty with injuries that would hospitalize any other species for months. He brought up a holographic display. Numbers and graphs filled the air. Coalition intelligence has completed a comprehensive analysis. The results are disturbing, a Velthan counselor interrupted. Disturbing how? The humans have good medicine. This should be celebrated. The issue is not the medicine itself, said a Dralin intelligence officer. The issue is that we have been calculating human combat effectiveness completely wrong. More graphs appeared. Combat casualty rates, return to duty times, mission completion percentages. The numbers painted a startling picture. When a Kresh warrior suffers a broken bone, we assume they are out of action for 2 months minimum. The Dralin continued. When a Velthan suffers similar damage, we assume 3 to 4 months. We applied these same assumptions to human casualties. But humans don't follow those timelines, the Kresh General said. A human with a broken bone might return to duty in days. A human with a soft tissue injury might never leave duty at all. Dr. Donghyun stood up from the human delegation. He was an older man with white hair and steady hands. If I may speak? The council leader, a Yuvari with silver wings, gestured for him to continue. What you're discovering is that human biology is unusual, Donghyun said. Not superior, just different. We evolved under specific pressures. Earth is a harsh world. Our ancestors were prey animals who became hunters. We survived by outlasting threats, not outrunning them. He pulled up a new display showing human evolutionary history. This shaped our bodies in specific ways. We have incredible endurance. We can regulate our body temperature through sweating, allowing us to run for hours in heat that would kill most species. We can survive injuries that would be fatal to others, and we heal quickly enough to matter in evolutionary timescales. But you never told us this, a Velthan general said, her crystalline voice sharp with accusation. We didn't think it was remarkable, Admiral Sun Hee replied. She stood next to Donghyun, her military uniform crisp and perfect. Every species assumes their own capabilities are normal. We didn't realize other species were so different until we started comparing notes. The Kresh General brought up more data. Let me make this clear with numbers. In the past year of coalition operations, humans comprised 12% of combat personnel, but humans accounted for only 4% of medical evacuations. We assumed humans were simply more careful or more skilled. We were wrong. Humans take damage at the same rate as everyone else, the Dralin officer explained. They just don't stay damaged. Their return-to-duty rate is, he paused like he didn't believe his own data, 300% faster for skeletal injuries, 250% faster for soft tissue damage, 170% faster for burns and trauma. Silence filled the council chamber. Jinho could feel the weight of dozens of alien eyes on him and the other humans. This changes our strategic calculations significantly, said a senior commander from a species Jinho didn't recognize. We have been planning operations based on incorrect assumptions about human casualty rates. Not just operations, another voice added. Supply lines, medical facilities, evacuation protocols, everything. Admiral Sun Hee spoke again, her voice calm but firm. We didn't hide this information. Every human medical file in the Coalition database contains accurate recovery time estimates. The problem is that no one believed those estimates were real, because they seemed impossible, the Velthan general said quietly. To you, yes. To us, they're normal. Sun Hee looked around the chamber. This is what I was afraid of. We're not trying to deceive anyone. We're just being ourselves. But ourselves is very different from you. The Yuvari Council leader spoke for the first time. Her voice was soft but carried authority. Let us move past accusations. The question now is what this means for the Coalition. Admiral Sun Hee, you have been preparing remarks? Yes, Council Leader. Sun Hee activated a new presentation. Dr. Donghyun and I have been working with Coalition Medical Command to address these issues. The presentation showed side-by-side comparisons of human and alien physiology. It highlighted the differences systematically. Bone structure, healing rates, pain tolerance, endurance capacity. Humans are endurance specialists, Donghyun explained. We're not stronger than most species. We're not faster. We're not tougher in terms of raw physical resistance. But we keep going. We function through injuries that would incapacitate others. We recover faster. And perhaps most importantly, we have cultural and psychological mechanisms that make us unwilling to give up. Captain Deho stood. If I may share a personal example? The council leader nodded. During the defense of Station Kepler 3 years ago, I was hit by shrapnel. Broken ribs, punctured lung, severe blood loss. Coalition medical protocols said I should be evacuated immediately. I refused. I stayed at my post for 6 more hours until the battle ended. Then I walked to the medical bay myself. He pulled up his own medical records. The alien doctors were horrified. They said I should have been unconscious or dead. But I wasn't, because humans don't work that way. A Kresh warrior in the audience stood up. Jinho recognized her, the old soldier from the demonstration who had lost an arm. I have fought beside humans. I have seen what Captain Deho describes, but I thought these were exceptional individuals. You are saying this is normal for your species? Normal enough, Deho said. Not every human can do what I did, but it's not rare either. Human history is full of people who kept fighting with terrible injuries. This is both admirable and disturbing, the Velthan general said. Your species fights through conditions that would break others. Which brings us to the real question, the Yuvari Council leader said. How does this affect our military doctrine? Admiral Sunhee took over. We propose a complete revision of human casualty estimates and medical protocols. Human forces should have different evacuation criteria, different medical support structures, different assumptions about combat persistence. This will require significant changes to our operational planning, a military strategist noted. Yes, but it will also make our planning more accurate. Right now, you're overestimating how much medical support humans need. You're underestimating how long we can stay in the fight. The Drallan intelligence officer spoke up. There's another factor we need to discuss. If human resilience is this far beyond coalition norms, what else have we miscalculated? That question hung in the air for a long moment. Dr. Dongyun answered carefully. Human capabilities vary widely depending on context. Our healing and endurance are exceptional. Our raw physical strength is average for our size. Our intelligence is comparable to most spacefaring species. We're not superhuman, we're just human, which apparently means something different than everyone assumed. The problem, Admiral Sunhee added, is that we're still discovering these differences ourselves. We didn't have comparison data until we joined the coalition. For all we know, there are other areas where humans are unusual that we haven't identified yet. A junior officer from a small species Jinho didn't know raised a tentacle. Are there any negative differences? Areas where humans are weaker than the average? Dongyun considered this. Yes. Humans are relatively fragile in terms of immediate damage resistance. We don't have armored skin or reinforced bones. A blow that would bruise a Kresh might break a human bone. We compensate with technology and healing, but we're not naturally tough. Also, Sunhee added, humans require specific environmental conditions. We need oxygen at specific pressures, temperatures within a relatively narrow range, and regular food and water. Some 6 months passed like a blur. Jinho barely recognized his life anymore. He stood in the observation deck of Orbital Station Kepler, looking down at the planet below. The station orbited a neutral world that served as a major coalition hub. But more importantly, it now housed the largest medical training facility in known space. Quite a view, Nurse Minji said, joining him at the window. She carried a tablet full of schedules and student evaluations. Remember when we were just 2 medics on a frigate? I try not to think about it, Jinho said with a tired smile. It makes me realize how complicated everything has become. The training facility took up 3 entire sections of the station. Every day, hundreds of alien medical personnel cycled through courses on human emergency medicine. The classes had waiting lists months long. Section 3 needs you in 20 minutes, Minji said, checking her tablet. You're teaching advanced fracture reduction to a group of Velthan medics. Again? Jinho had taught that class at least 50 times. They specifically requested you. Apparently you're famous now. Minji grinned. The medic who started the revolution. Jinho shook his head. He didn't feel revolutionary. He felt tired, but he couldn't deny the results. In the past 6 months, the entire coalition military had transformed. Every ship now carried at least 1 medic trained in human emergency techniques. New medical protocols had been written. Equipment had been redesigned. Supply chains had been reorganized, and most importantly, the casualty rates were dropping. Surgeon Yuna approached them, looking energized despite working a 12-hour shift. Jinho, you need to see the latest numbers. She pulled up a holographic display. Graphs and statistics filled the air between them. Coalition casualty returns to duty. Past 6 months versus previous 6 months. Overall improvement, 43%. Jinho stared at the numbers. 43%? That's across all species, not just humans. The alien medics are adapting our techniques to their own physiology. It's working. Yuna zoomed in on specific data. Skeletal injury recovery improved by 60% for species with similar bone structure to ours. Soft tissue injuries improved by 35%. Even species very different from humans are seeing 20 to 30% improvements. How is this possible? Minji asked. Their biology is so different. The principles are universal, Yuna explained. Aggressive stabilization, early mobilization, pain management that keeps patients functional. We taught them to think differently about injury and recovery, not just how to heal, but how to keep fighting while healing. The door opened and Corpsman Taejin entered, followed by a group of Kresh medics. They wore the distinctive uniforms of Coalition Medical Corps, but adapted for their four-armed bodies and hard shells. Instructor Jinho, one of them said, her mandibles clicking in the pattern Jinho had learned meant respect. We need your guidance. One of our warriors suffered a complex fracture during training. We stabilized it using human technique, but we are unsure about the next steps. Jinho followed them to the medical bay. The injured Kresh lay on a treatment bed, one of her limbs immobilized in an emergency brace. The limb was different from a human limb, thinner with an exoskeleton covering the internal structure. But the principle was the same. You did the initial treatment? Jinho asked. Yes. We reduced the fracture and applied stabilization. But Kresh physiology requires the exoskeleton to shed and regrow. We do not know how to proceed. Jinho examined the injury carefully. The fracture was clean, and the medics had done good work stabilizing it. The exoskeleton is like a natural cast. Let it shed naturally but keep the internal structure immobilized. The limb will be weak until the new exoskeleton hardens, but the bone underneath will heal faster with proper stabilization. The Kresh medics looked at each other. We never considered this approach, because you were thinking in terms of waiting for natural healing. But if you stabilize the bone properly, the body can heal and shed simultaneously. It's still slower than human healing, but faster than your traditional methods. One of the medics clicked her mandibles rapidly. Excitement. This could change everything for our species. It already is, Jinho said. He left them to complete their work and headed to his next class. The station was busy, filled with medical personnel from across the galaxy. Everywhere he looked, he saw beings learning, adapting, improving. In one training room, a Velthan instructor demonstrated splinting techniques on crystalline limbs. In another, a Dralin surgeon practiced emergency procedures with human-designed tools adapted for scaled hands. A group of Yuvari medics huddled around a holographic display, studying human physiology with intense focus. The revolution had spread beyond just emergency medicine. Species were sharing their own medical knowledge more freely now. A Velthan technique for treating radiation exposure had been adapted for human use. A Dralin poison treatment protocol had saved 3 human lives in the past month. The exchange of knowledge flowed in all directions. Jinho entered the advanced training room. 20 Velthan medics waited for him, their crystalline bodies reflecting the bright lights. Welcome back, Jinho said. Today we're going to talk about complications. What happens when a fracture reduction doesn't go perfectly? How to recognize problems? How to adapt in the field? He taught for 2 hours, demonstrating on medical models, answering questions, sharing stories from his experience. The Velthans absorbed everything with quiet intensity. When the class ended, their instructor approached him. Her name was Thel, the same medical officer who had questioned him 6 months ago after the first incident. You have changed how we think about medicine, Thel said. When I first saw you treat that Marine, I thought it was impossible. Now I understand it was just different. Has it helped your people? Jinho asked, immeasurably. Velthan casualties are returning to duty faster. Not as fast as humans, but faster than we ever thought possible. You gave us permission to be aggressive in our treatment. To prioritize function over perfection. She paused, her crystalline face catching the light. But there is something else. Something perhaps more important. What's that? Hope. When our people are injured, they no longer assume they are finished. They know they can heal and return to duty. This changes everything about how they fight, how they think about risk, how they approach danger. Jinho hadn't considered this angle. You're saying the psychological impact matters as much as the medical one? Perhaps more. A warrior who believes they can survive and return is more effective than one who sees injury as the end. Thel gestured around the training facility. This is what you have given the coalition. Not just medical technique. A new way of thinking about resilience. Later that evening, Jinho met with Admiral Sunhee in the station's command center. She had come to review the training program and assess its effectiveness. The council is pleased, Sunhee said, reviewing reports on her display. Casualty rates down. Return to duty rates up. Medical costs down. Everything is improving. That's good, Jinho said. Sunhee looked at him carefully. But I keep thinking about what we learned. About how different humans are. About how we didn't know we were unusual until we had comparison data. Jinho leaned back in his chair. What else don't we know about ourselves? That's a question a lot of people are asking, Sunhee admitted. Research teams are studying human capabilities in dozens of areas now. Endurance, pain tolerance, adaptability, psychological resilience. We're finding differences everywhere they look. Is that going to be a problem? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on how we handle it. Sunhee closed her display and looked directly at Jinho. Humanity joined the coalition as junior partners. We were newcomers untested in galactic politics and warfare, but now they're realizing we bring unique capabilities to the Alliance. That changes the dynamic, changes it how. We're becoming valuable. Essential even. Every species wants human medics now. Every fleet wants human endurance fighters. Every research team wants to study human capabilities. She smiled slightly. We went from junior partners to critical assets in 6 months. The door opened and Captain Daeho entered, followed by Dr. Dong-hyun. They both looked serious. We have a situation, Daeho said without preamble. The Ravik are launching a major offensive. Biggest fleet movement in 10 years. Sunhee stood immediately. Where? Sector 7. They're hitting 3 systems simultaneously. Coalition Command is mobilizing everything we have. That's going to be bloody, Dong-hyun said quietly. Mass casualties across multiple battle zones. Sunhee looked at Jinho. How many medics do we have trained in human emergency protocols? Approximately 800 across the fleet, plus another 200 in advanced training. It's not enough, but it's what we have. Sunhee activated her communicator. This is Admiral Sunhee to all Coalition medical personnel with human emergency training. Report to your combat stations immediately. We're about to test everything we've learned. The next few hours were chaos. The station emptied as medics rushed to their assigned ships. The Coalition fleet began moving toward Sector 7. Jinho found himself back on a combat frigate, the same one where this had all started 6 months ago. Hyun was there, fully healed now, back to his duties as a Marine. He greeted Jinho.